Hey there everyone, I'm Jeff. This is Tabletop Toolbox, and I'd like to welcome you to my first episode of, well, what I'm going to call the weekly Ratchet. Now listen, this is a workshopping title, all right? I'm kind of playing with this. I've also thought about Torqued Up, which I don't really like that one. I don't know. I'm coming up with some ideas. Maybe this will evolve a little bit over time, but this is something that I've been thinking about doing for a long time. Listen, after playing games, my favorite thing to do is sit around and talk about those games, talk about games that make me think of, and just all kinds of stuff like that. So the idea here is, how do I just have some other folks that I can talk about games with, and that's going to be you. So what I'm going to do is talk to you about some of the games that I've picked up maybe over the past week. I'm going to talk about some games I've played over the past week, maybe things that are coming up to play. I'm going to talk about some crowdfunding projects that I've been keeping an eye on, and maybe, as you may know, I also do some content with the Dice Tower, so I might give you a little sneak peek at what I'm working on for them. And this is going to evolve, right? I'm going to bounce some questions off you guys. I'm going to bring up some weekly topics. You guys will have a chance to respond in the comments of these videos, and then the following week or following episode, I'll respond to some of those, read some of them here on the channel, and we'll just kind of start a conversation. I think it could be fun. It could also be a train wreck. I have no idea, but I'm going to go ahead and kick it off. This is the Weekly Ratchet. All right, let's kick things off with new games I've picked up over the past week or so. Now, these aren't necessarily brand new games. In fact, just recently here in Richmond, we had what's called a math trade, and this is a online kind of Board Game Geek supported method of putting a bunch of games up that you would like to maybe part with, and other folks do that, and then you kind of go and select the games that you're interested in, and then you use this matrix to sort of select which games you're willing to part with to get other games, and then the software kind of figures it all out, and hopefully you get a bunch of trades. And I did. So a couple of games I got. Let's see, I have Ahoy. This is from Leader Games, makers of Root and Oath and Fort and others. I don't really know much about it. I'm not a huge fan of Root. I think it's an impressive game. It's a really neat system, but it's just not my kind of game. A little too confrontational for me, but curious to see what Ahoy does differently. I also have Planted. This is by Phil Walker Harding. I won't talk about how many times I've had to retake this so I can say that correctly. I don't know a whole lot about this either. I think it's a set collection game. I've known that it's got really great components, but I've kind of avoided it because, you know, how many nature games do we really need? But we'll check that one out. I also picked up Clank in Space. I've only played Clank once, but I love space games, and I did really enjoy it. It's a deck builder. I love deck builders. And so when a chance came up to pick up the space-themed version of it, I thought, why not? So I got that one. I also have, now this one's a crazy one, I think. This is Flick of Faith. This is a dexterity game about gods, and I was thinking maybe that it was sort of Greek pantheon or Roman pantheon, but it's not. I don't really know a whole lot about this, except for that it's a dexterity game, and I do like dexterity games, although they can tend to get a little heavy-handed with the rules. This one says it's a fairly quick game. I think it's also fascinating in that there are different size pieces, so that could really make things interesting. Looking forward to trying this one out, hopefully soon. I also picked up The Colonists. This is a very big, very heavy, very complex Euro game. I think it's kind of a city builder / civilization game. And I love the fact that it says it plays anywhere from 30 to 240 minutes. Board Game Geek would suggest it can run up even to 360 minutes. I don't know when I'm going to get this played. I almost bought it last year when I was up in Indianapolis visiting my friends Katie and Greg of the Meeple Society, and I didn't, and now I have it, and who knows if I will ever play it. All right, one more game that I got from the math trade, and this one is an interesting little story because it's a little controversial. This is Drop Mix. Now, I've seen this. I've seen it in the wild. I've seen it at a little board games cafe place that we have down in Midlothian, Virginia. And I looked into it, just sounded super neat. This is by Harmonix and by Hasbro. Now, Harmonix, I believe, made Guitar Hero. They either made Guitar Hero or Rock Band, and I had the Rock Band game. I did not know that this was by Hasbro or Harmonix. I also didn't know that it was app supported. So you've got this little electronic box. I'm not going to pull it out of here because it is in here quite sturdy. But anyways, you've got this box, You set your cards on it. The cards have little RFID chips in them, and it will play a section of a song. And so there are songs in here like Carly Rae Jepsen's Call Me Maybe. There's some stuff by Disturbed. There was some Ed Sheeran stuff in here, but all older songs because this thing came out something like 2016. And then I found out that the app, which it uses, was abandoned in 2019. You can't download it. It's no longer supported. And it kind of rendered this thing unplayable. So I traded a game that you could play for a game you can't play. Now, I did since manage to figure out how to get the APK on my phone from the original Drop Mix. The app that I had to use to do so was quite shady. So I got it working, but I have no idea how long my phone will survive the ordeal. Everything's okay so far, knock on wood. Anyways, Drop Mix. Gonna see how this works. I'm not gonna talk too much about it right now. I don't think it's really a game. It's really just more of an activity. It's a toy, but there is a head-to-head mode. You can get like little achievements, little challenges that you can get. You can earn points or something, but there's no instructions on how to do so. There's nothing that tells you, here's how you get this achievement and here's how you win a head-to-head. So I don't know. My daughter loves it. She's infatuated with it. I picked up one expansion to see if that will work with the app. We'll see. Drop Mix by Hasbro. There was one other game that was on the math trade, and I threw everything that I had at it, and I didn't get it. But I knew the guy who was trading it away, and so we made an agreement where I traded him some money, and he gave me Hegemony by Hegemonic Project Games. This is the Kickstarter, the extended version with all the upgrades. If you saw my top 10 favorite games of 2023 on the Dice Tower, this made the list. It is a fascinating project of this kind of class warfare idea. I've only played it once at 2-player, which I don't think is the way that this game shines, but even that was a just fascinating experience, and I just haven't been able to stop thinking about it. And so now I have it, and I'm hoping to get this played at least in April when my friends Katie and Greg come down from Indianapolis, and we will duke it out. Oh, geez, that's heavy. So while all of that was happening, while the math trade was taking place here in Richmond, I was actually out of town because I was in Annapolis, Maryland, where I actually grew up, because there was a comic book store called Third Eye, and they were doing a big sale. They have a game store, they have a comic book store, and they just opened a music store. So I went up there, I met up with my sister, and we did some shopping. And one game I picked up, well, an expansion that I picked up is Prophecy of Kings for TI4. Now I have TI4, even though I've kind of always said I was never going to get it. I think it's an amazing game, but it's really just not my kind of a game. But I picked it up for like $40 here in town. But you have to get the expansion, right? That's how these things work. So I picked that up. I also picked up a little game called Shobu. This is a small 2-player tactical skirmish game, kind of a twist on sort of like checkers, chess. I don't know. I've played this a couple times already. This is a fascinating game if you like easy yet very just complex. It's simple to teach, but you can really get yourself lost in the 4 different boards, the 4 different play areas that you play on this. Kind of lets you see that there real quick. Neat game. Really had a lot of fun with Shobu. And then I picked up Cockroach Poker just because, it's still in shrink, so we'll see if I ever play that. And then I also picked up Pulsar 2849. I forgot to bring that off the shelf. I'm on a little bit of a Vladimir Suchi kick lately. I'll tell you why in a little bit. But those are the games that I have picked up in the past week or so. Are any of those of interest to you? What would you like to see or learn a little bit more about here on the channel? Let me know in the comments. All right, up next I'm going to talk real quick about some crowdfunding projects. The most recent one of interest to me is the Dice Tower 2024 fundraising project. They do this every year to raise some funds to kind of help pay the bills over there at the Dice Tower. And the notable part of this was that one of their goals, their stretch goals, was $350,000, which they exceeded, and that was for yours truly to make his top 100 list of games on the channel. And I'm anxious, but also excited to do that. I've actually spent the past 2 days just preparing a very, very exciting and sort of high action intro for that, which I'm just about done with. So I'm very excited for that. Keep an eye out on the Dice Tower channel to see those probably a little later on this year. Now, as far as games go, there's only one project that I'm funding right now, and that is Eve: War for New Eden. This is it's a 4X board game. that appears to have sort of the skin of EVE Online applied to it. EVE Online, if you don't know, is a massively multiplayer online role-playing game. The company is based out of Iceland, and I played this for many years. I played it for 4 or more years, quitting sometime back in around 2012, 2013, I guess actually is when I quit after my daughter was born. I just didn't have the time for it anymore. I always liked the game. I like the people that I met. I still communicate with some of them. But, I never got into the real deep stuff. I never went out, I never went into a wormhole. I never did a whole lot of null-sec space exploration. I did some of it, but not a whole bunch. But not a lot of that is in this game either. It is just a 4X game. There is some technology trees to it. It looks like you can produce ships and you can kind of build things with it, which I think is pretty neat because that was always the part of the game that I got into, is that sort of industrialist aspect. Anyways, looks neat. I'll probably end up backing it. It's a little pricey, but not too bad. There are some big projects coming up that I am interested in, like Ostia and its new expansion. What are you keeping your eye out for? What's getting your money out in some crowdfunding projects? Let me know. Or let me know if there's something you'd like me to try and check out and give you some feedback on. I'll see what I can do. Anyways, that is the crowdfunding projects. All right, so I'm going to do something here in this video. I'm going to ask a question of the week, and I'm going to welcome you to put your feedback down in the comments, as well as to some other things that I've asked you about already. And I thought about this one for a little bit. I'm going to ask you what your thoughts are on the new Wormspan game. This is by Stonemaier Games. It is, as much as we can tell, kind of a reskinning of Wingspan. And I'm just curious what your thoughts are on it. Do you think it's just a cash grab, a chance to try and get some more of that Wingspan monies? Or is this a chance to sort of bring the idea of Wingspan to folks who maybe weren't really keen on the theme of that game? I'm not really sure where I stand on it either, and in the interest of keeping this video from getting too long, I'll save my comments to share with yours next week. All right, last thing for this video is to talk about some of the games that I have played in the past week. Now, every Tuesday, I have a standing game night with a good friend of mine. His name is Daniel. Comes over, and we play all kinds of stuff, whether they're old games, new games, review copies I have from the Dice Tower, you name it. Last week, we got together, and we played Glass Road by Uwe Rosenberg. I was expecting a much more heavy experience to this. It was an interesting game in the fact that the main resources you have ore and food and water and a bunch of other stuff, sand and other resources. But every time that you get more than one of those resources, they automatically convert into the premium resources, which are brick and glass. And so in some instances, you're trying to get resources to let you then produce the glass and brick, but other times you just need stone, or you just need wood, or you just need food. And if those things get converted into those premium resources, it actually makes the game a little bit more difficult. A very, very fast game, which I also wasn't expecting for an Uwe title. I did well with it. I got a lot of points. I did win the game, but wasn't really what I expected. I was looking forward to that kind of heavy, mathy Euro that you usually get out of an Uwe game. Still, fun experience. The other game that we played, which I have sitting right here, is Evacuation. This is by Vladimir Suchy, as I have already mentioned. This is the newest title. This is brand new. I've already gotten to play this a couple times, and I'm really enjoying the puzzle of this game. The idea is that you've got to basically evacuate an old and dying planet. It's not called Earth, but we know it's Earth, and you need to move everything, your population, your factories, everything that was on that old planet. You need to at least get off of it and over towards the new planet and build that engine there. So you start off with this robust engine that is generating a lot of resources on the old planet, and by the end of the game, you have to have that engine going over on the new planet. It's tough. It's a really, really tough game, and there isn't a ton of luck in it. There's probably just enough to kind of keep things from being completely solvable, but I have not figured out that optimum process yet for getting that engine going on the new planet. I played it a couple times. We played it last week on Tuesday. I did win that game, and I also tried it out this weekend solo and didn't do that well either. I mean, I got all the objectives met, right? I got everything working, but I still can't seem to crack 60 points on the score, which the rulebook seems to suggest would be the easy way to play. It says eventually you can hit 80. I don't see that happening. So I'm anxious to try and learn some more strategy and some more tactics to this, but I'm really enjoying this one. Now, I mentioned I played that solo. I played it solo at our log cabin in Shenandoah Valley. Last year, my family and I have put a lot of time into building a log cabin, and my brother is visiting town, and so we took him out to the cabin for the weekend, and we played a ton of games. I'm not going to go through all these in detail, but we played Distilled. This is a game that I just recently reviewed out on the Dice Tower channel as part of a sort of a 4-in-1. Distilled is a really neat game to play, but it's not really a very fun game to play, I don't think. And I did try some new things with Distilled over the weekend. And it was kind of interesting. I think things did go fairly well in that I got, I got a lot of points. So I did win the game. I won by like a point. And I had a lot of extra resources and a lot of unused equipment at the end of the game, which is interesting. You usually kind of barely manage to scrape by throughout that game. And I actually was able to make some purchases. I was kind of heading in one direction, then had to change my mind a couple of times. And so I ended up with a lot of leftovers. Still just don't know that I love this game, but I do enjoy playing it. I wish that it made more sense. I wish that it wasn't a difference between points and money. I kind of wish it was just a money game. You just had to make the most money by the end of the game. Anyways, you can check out my thoughts on the Dice Tower channel. We also played Shobu. We played Reavers of Midgard. Now this was obviously a sequel to Champions of Midgard, one of my favorite games. I really like Champions of Midgard. I got Reavers in a math trade sometime last year, and I finally got a chance to play it. I didn't like this one as much as Champions because in Champions, as funny as it is to say, there is a bit more of that tension of going off to fight these monsters or fighting these ogres and hoping that your Vikings will get the job done, right? You roll the dice and you're hoping you get enough hits to do enough damage to take out your foes. In Reavers, you roll just to see what kind of a Viking you're going to get. And then you basically just go to fight a monster and you just spend the Vikings to get the monster. It's almost like you're sacrificing them to get the monster and get the points. You can fight them, but it was almost kind of easier to say, hey, I've got the 5 that it needs and I pick this up and I get 14 points. I don't know. There's also this kind of follow the leader aspect in that you pick an action and then other players can copy that action if they can afford to pay the resources. And in a 3 or 4 player game, you only get to actually make one choice every round, and then you're just hoping that you can follow everyone else throughout the game. And I just don't love those systems because you can get yourself into a situation very easily where you just cannot do anything, and you see everyone doing all the stuff, and you're just kind of sitting there twiddling your thumbs. And I don't usually care for that. We didn't have it a lot in the 2-player game, just my brother and I, because you get to pick 2 actions as a 2-player game. And that is probably actually why I enjoyed it as much as I did. Anyways, that was Reavers of Midgard. We played Q-Birds, a real small little card game that my daughter absolutely loves. My wife won that one. We played Wild Tiled West. This is a polyomino game about the Wild Wild West. And fun game. Still wished it was a little easier to get the tiles that you're really trying to get to. For example, one of my favorite tiles is the Workshop, if I recall. I don't remember what it's called, where you can flip it over and it lets you take any tile you want. And I was really trying to get it so I could pick up one of the other tiles I really needed. And I think you get that tile on an 18, and we never rolled an 18. So I never got my hands on that tile. And I felt like I struggled through the entire game. I did eke it out in the end. Actually, ended up with a pretty decent point spread that I wasn't expecting. The last game that we played was Dead Reckoning. This is it's not really an older game. It came out in 22 from AEG, and this is a John D. Clare game. It's kind of a deck builder, but you're not actually adding cards to your deck. You're upgrading the cards in your deck. So you will always have 12 cards, and you are slotting clear Lexian cards into your sleeves to add more abilities to your crew of pirates, or just crew, however you want to look at it, if you want to play the good mode version of the game. I've always kind of struggled with Dead Reckoning. I played it a couple times back when it came out. It never really clicked with me, and it just kind of sat on my shelf. And I really wanted to try it out again. I knew my brother kind of liked that pirate theme, and so we broke this one out, and I had a pretty good game of it. I focused on getting upgrades into my cards that let me draw more cards. So even though it's not a deck builder, you can still cycle through your deck a little quicker if you get the right upgrades into your crew cards. And I did that, and I had a pretty good experience. And again, I ended up with a pretty decent point spread, tons of money at the end of the game. and I really did enjoy it. I'm actually kind of hoping that I can get through maybe some of the campaigns of this game. I haven't tried any of those. I feel like there's a ton of content in that box that I just haven't gotten to check out. So that was Dead Reckoning. Now, tonight is game night, and so we're going to hopefully play Sky Mines, and I do think we're going to crank out that new Clank in Space. So that's what I'm looking forward to today. Hey folks, that wraps up the first episode of the weekly Ratchet here on Tabletop Toolbox. What'd you think? Let me know if there's other content you'd like to see. Maybe you weren't interested in this at all. Let me know. Doesn't mean I'm not going to do it. I will try to get another one of these out here in the next week. I'm not going to make any promises, but we'll see how this goes. I'm looking forward to some new ideas and some new content here on the channel. That's it for me, folks. I will see you again soon. Cheers.